My name is Dana Anderson, and at 32 years old, I never expected to be accused of stealing from my own grandmother. It happened during what should have been a joyful celebration, my grandmother, Eleanor's 82nd birthday party at her Victorian home in Naperville. Everything seemed normal until she suddenly looked me straight in the eyes and asked about $400,000 she claimed to have given me. The room went silent, and my heart stopped. I had no idea what she was talking about, and worse, no one believed me. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe to hear more shocking family stories that changed my life forever. My grandmother Eleanor's Victorian home has always been the gathering place for our family. The three-story house with its wrap-around porch, intricate woodwork, and stained glass windows had been in our family for generations. Eleanor purchased it with my grandfather Harold over 50 years ago, painstakingly restoring every inch of the place. After Harold passed away 15 years ago, she refused to downsize, saying the memories in those walls were worth more than convenience. Eleanor and I have always shared a special bond. While she loved all her grandchildren equally, we connected on a deeper level. As a child, I would spend weekends with her baking cookies in her spacious kitchen or reading books in her sunroom. As I grew older, she became my confidant, offering wisdom when I struggled with college decisions or relationship problems. She attended my college graduation with tears of pride and helped me furnish my first apartment. In many ways, she was more than a grandmother, she was my best friend. Our family dynamics were complicated, as most families are. My mother, Laura, Eleanor's daughter, had always been the peacekeeper. Mom worked as a high school English teacher, her patient demeanor perfect for both teenagers and family disputes. My father, James, was more reserved, focusing on his engineering career and staying out of family politics whenever possible. My older brother, Anthony, had moved to California for a tech job, returning home only for major holidays. He and I were close, despite the distance, texting almost daily about everything from work frustrations to our favorite television shows. My younger sister, Cassandra, lived nearby with her husband and 2-year-old son, visiting Eleanor frequently and helping with house maintenance. Then there was Uncle Frank, Eleanor's only son and my mother's brother. Frank had always been openly interested in Eleanor's finances, often offering unsolicited investment advice or questioning her spending decisions. His wife had left him years ago, leaving him to raise my cousins Samantha and Nathan alone. Samantha, 28, worked at a local bank and had recently purchased a surprisingly expensive home. Nathan, 25, was between jobs, but somehow maintained a luxury lifestyle complete with designer clothes and a new sports car. Recent family gatherings had been tense due to Eleanor's declining health. At 82, she was still remarkably independent, but small signs of memory issues had begun to appear. She would occasionally forget conversations or misplace items, dismissing our concerns with a wave of her hand. The family avoided direct conversations about potential dementia but whispered worries when she left the room. Eleanor's impressive life story made these changes even harder to witness. She had been one of the few female accountants at her firm in the 1960s, breaking glass ceilings and managing finances for several major corporations before retirement. Her financial savvy continued into her personal life with smart investments that allowed her to live comfortably and help family members through rough patches. When my grandfather died, she took over their shared finances without missing a beat. Despite my good marketing job at a Chicago firm, I was still struggling with student loans. My parents had helped as much as they could, but with 3 children to put through college, their resources were stretched thin. Eleanor knew about my financial situation but never offered direct help, believing in the value of working through challenges independently. She had helped with my down payment on my condo 3 years ago, but it was structured as a loan that I was repaying monthly. The months leading up to Eleanor's birthday had been concerning. Mom called me twice about finding Eleanor's reading glasses in the refrigerator. During my visits, I noticed Eleanor would sometimes stop mid-sentence, looking confused, before continuing on a completely different topic. When I gently suggested a doctor visit, she became uncharacteristically angry, insisting nothing was wrong with her mind. Uncle Frank had used these incidents to suggest Eleanor needed more supervision of her finances. He had been pushing for power of attorney, claiming it was to protect her from scammers who target the elderly. My mother resisted, believing Eleanor was still capable of managing her affairs with occasional support. These disagreements created an undercurrent of tension that threatened to surface at any family gathering. What none of us realized was that Eleanor had noticed more than she let on, her accountant's mind still sharp when it came to numbers, even as other memories began to fade. The morning of Eleanor's 82nd birthday dawned bright and clear, a perfect September Saturday. I arrived at her house early, around 8 in the morning, carrying bags of decorations and the special photo album I had created as her gift. The house was already bustling with activity. Mom was in the kitchen preparing Eleanor's favorite foods, the counters covered with ingredients for chicken, salad sandwiches, deviled eggs, and a chocolate raspberry cake. "Morning, sweetie," Mom called out when I entered. "Can you start on the decorations? I want everything perfect before the guests arrive at noon." Her hands were covered in flour as she rolled out pastry dough, her forehead creased with concentration. "Where's Grandma?" I asked, setting down my bags on the dining room table. "Still getting ready upstairs." She insisted on doing her hair and makeup herself, said she wanted to look her best today. Mom smiled, but I could see worry behind her eyes. She seemed sharper today, which is good. "Yesterday was a bit rough," she kept asking when Harold would be home. I swallowed hard at the mention of my grandfather, gone for 15 years now. These lapses in memory were becoming more frequent, though we tried to pretend otherwise. I spent the next hour hanging blue and silver streamers, Eleanor's favorite colors, and arranging framed photos from throughout her life on a special table. There was Eleanor as a young woman in her accounting office, Eleanor and Harold on their wedding day, Eleanor holding each grandchild as a newborn. 82 years of a remarkable life condensed into photographs. Uncle Frank arrived around 10, carrying a small wrapped package and immediately asking about Eleanor's medication. "Did she take her blood pressure pills this morning?" he asked Mom without even saying hello first. "Last time I was here, she told me she sometimes forgets." "Good morning to you too, Frank," Mom replied, her tone carefully neutral. "Yes, she took them. I made sure before I started cooking. Someone needs to create a better system for her. She can't be trusted to remember these things anymore." Frank set his gift down and glanced around the house critically. "And this place is getting to be too much for her. All these stairs, all this maintenance." "She loves this house," I interjected, irritated by his tone. "And she's managing fine with a little help." Frank gave me a dismissive look. "You don't see her daily like I do. Trust me, things are worse than you realize." Before I could respond, Eleanor descended the stairs, looking elegant in a blue dress that matched her eyes, her silver hair styled in soft waves. For a moment, she seemed completely like her old, self-confident and present. "Frank, darling, I hear you discussing me as if I'm not here," she said, her voice steady and clear. 82 doesn't mean dead yet." Frank's face reddened. "Just concerned about you, Mother. That's all." Eleanor patted his cheek as she passed him. "Your concern would be more convincing without the paperwork from assisted living facilities I found in your car last week." The room fell silent. This was news to me and apparently to Mom as well, based on her shocked expression. Frank stammered something about just gathering information, but Eleanor had already moved on, complimenting the decorations and asking about the food. As noon approached, more family members arrived. Cassandra came with her husband Todd and their toddler James Jr., who immediately demanded a tour of Grammy's big house. Anthony had flown in from San Francisco the night before and arrived with an expensive-looking wrapped box. Samantha and Nathan showed up together, both dressed like they were attending a business meeting rather than a family birthday party. I noticed something odd about my cousins right away. Both seemed uncomfortable around Eleanor, avoiding direct conversation and flinching when she approached them for hugs. Nathan checked his phone constantly while Samantha kept glancing at her father as if seeking direction. Frank remained close to Eleanor throughout the early part of the party, monitoring her interactions and jumping in to clarify when she occasionally mixed up a name or date. Several times I observed hushed conversations between Frank and his children, their heads bent together in the corner of the room, conversations stopping abruptly when anyone approached. Eleanor's longtime neighbors began arriving around 12:30, bearing gifts and birthday wishes. Her bridge club friends, most in their 70s and 80s themselves, brought a beautiful flower arrangement and reminisced about their 50 years of weekly games. Eleanor's former co-worker Bernard, now 90, was helped in by his grandson, insisting he wouldn't miss young Eleanor's birthday for anything. The living room filled with laughter and conversation, the tensions momentarily forgotten as everyone celebrated Eleanor. She sat in her favorite armchair, receiving guests with the grace of a queen holding court, occasionally looking confused, but quickly covering with a smile or a general question. Around 2 in the afternoon, Mom brought out the cake, 3 tiers of chocolate and raspberry, with 82 candles crowded on top. We sang Happy Birthday, Eleanor, beaming as she surveyed her family and friends gathered around her. With a surprising strength, she blew out most of the candles in one breath, leaving just a few flickering that Anthony helped extinguish. Time for presents, Cassandra announced, bringing over the pile of wrapped gifts that had accumulated on the side table. Eleanor opened each one with careful precision, saving the wrapping paper as she had done her entire life. From Anthony, a cashmere sweater in her favorite shade of blue. From Cassandra and her family, a digital photo frame preloaded with family photos. Frank gave her an envelope containing a gift certificate for a spa day, though Eleanor had never been interested in such things. Samantha and Nathan jointly presented an expensive-looking watch that made Eleanor raise her eyebrows in surprise. "This looks very expensive, dears," she commented, studying their faces. "Very generous." Nathan shrugged uncomfortably. "You only turn 82 once, Grandma." When Eleanor opened my gift, the photo album documenting her life from childhood to present day, tears welled in her eyes. "Dana, this is perfect. You always know exactly what matters most." She hugged me tightly, and for a moment everything felt normal and right. None of us had any idea that the piece was about to shatter completely. Eleanor was examining a crystal vase from her neighbors when her demeanor suddenly changed. Her back straightened, her expression sharpened, and she set the vase down with deliberate care. The room continued buzzing with conversation, no one yet noticing the shift except me. Our eyes met across the room, and something in her gaze made my stomach tighten with apprehension. "Dana," she called out, her voice cutting through the chatter. "Come here, dear." The room quieted as I approached her chair, everyone sensing something in her tone. I knelt beside her, taking her hand. "Yes, Grandma." Eleanor patted my hand, then looked directly into my eyes. "Dana, tell me, what did you do with the $400,000 I gave you?" The question hit me like a physical blow. My mind went blank and I felt blood drain from my face. The silence in the room was absolute, everyone frozen in shock. "What $400,000, Grandma?" I managed to ask, my voice barely audible. Eleanor's gaze remained steady, her voice clear and firm. "The $400,000 I gave you 6 months ago to invest. I would like to know what you've done with it." I felt dozens of eyes boring into me. My throat constricted and my hands began to tremble. "Grandma, you never gave me any money like that. I don't know what you're talking about." Uncle Frank stepped forward immediately, his face flushed with anger. "Mother, are you saying Dana took money from you?" "Not took," Eleanor corrected calmly. "I gave it to her to invest on my behalf. $400,000 from my savings. But she hasn't mentioned it since, and I'd like an update." My mother rushed to my side, placing a protective hand on my shoulder. "Mom, I think you might be confused. Dana would never hide something like that from us." "I am not confused," Laura Eleanor replied, her voice taking on a steely edge I'd rarely heard. "I know exactly what I did with my money. I wrote Dana a check for $400,000 on March 15th. She promised to invest it in some new opportunities that would give me better returns than my current portfolio." I stood up, my legs shaking. "Grandma, that never happened. I swear to you, you never gave me any money like that." Uncle Frank's eyes narrowed as he studied me. "That's interesting because you bought a new car 3 months ago, didn't you, Dana? And took that vacation to Hawaii in April? Seems like quite a lot of spending for someone still complaining about student loans." The accusation hung in the air. Several of Eleanor's friends began gathering their purses and jackets, mumbling awkward goodbyes. Bernard's grandson helped him up, whispering something about family matters as they hastily departed. I saved for that car for 2 years. I protested, tears filling my eyes. And the Hawaii trip was mostly paid for with points from my company credit card. I can show you all the statements. Frank pulled out his phone. "I think we need to get to the bottom of this. I'm calling the police." "Frank," my mother gasped. "This is ridiculous. Mom is confused, that's all. We don't need to involve the authorities. Eleanor's voice cut through again. I am not confused, Laura. I know what I did with my money, and I want to know where it is now. Cassandra approached Eleanor, speaking gently. Grandma, are you sure it wasn't a dream? Sometimes you get dreams and reality mixed up lately. Eleanor's face hardened. Do not patronize me, Cassandra. I may be 82, but I know the difference between dreams and reality. I wrote that check myself from my main savings account. Check number 3782, dated March 15th. $400,000 made out to Dana Louise Anderson. The specificity of her statement sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't a vague accusation. She had details, exact details, but I knew with absolute certainty that I had never received such a check. Anthony stepped between Frank and me. Let's all calm down. There must be a reasonable explanation. Mom, can you check Grandma's financial records before we start throwing accusations around? Already calling the police? Frank replied, phone to his ear. This is elder abuse, plain and simple. The remaining guests awkwardly filed out, leaving only family in the living room. Eleanor sat calmly in her chair, watching the chaos unfold with an unreadable expression. My mother tried reasoning with Frank. My father attempted to calm everyone down, and Cassandra led her frightened toddler to another room. Samantha and Nathan huddled in the corner, whispering intensely. When I glanced their way, they immediately separated, avoiding eye contact. Something about their behavior struck me as odd, but I had no time to analyze it as Frank announced the police were on their way. I can't believe this is happening, I sobbed, collapsing onto the sofa. I would never steal from Grandma, never. My mother sat beside me, arm around my shoulders. We know that, honey. This will all get cleared up. Will it? Frank challenged. Mother has given specifics, Laura. A specific check number, a specific date. That's not confusion, that's fact. Frank enough, my father interjected, rare anger in his voice. You're making assumptions without evidence. The evidence is Mother's statement, Frank insisted, and Dana's suspicious spending. I buried my face in my hands, humiliation and anger washing over me in waves. My own family was turning against me based on a confused accusation. The birthday celebration had transformed into a nightmare, and I had no idea how to defend myself against something that had never happened. 20 minutes later, a knock at the door announced the arrival of the police. The last of Eleanor's birthday cake sat untouched on the dining room table. Candles melted into misshapen lumps, a sad reminder of how quickly joy had turned to accusation and betrayal. The doorbell rang and my father reluctantly answered. 2 police officers stood on the porch, a tall woman with her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun and a younger man with a notebook already in hand. Good afternoon, the female officer said. I'm Officer Patricia Hamilton, and this is Officer Michael Roberts. We received a call about a possible financial elder abuse situation. Frank immediately stepped forward. Yes, that was me, Frank Wilson. My mother, Eleanor Wilson, has just revealed that my niece took $400,000 from her. Officer Hamilton's expression remained neutral as she entered the living room. Ma'am, are you Eleanor Wilson? She asked, approaching my grandmother, who still sat regally in her armchair. I am Eleanor, confirmed, though I should clarify that I gave the money to my granddaughter voluntarily. I simply want to know what she's done with it. Officer Roberts began taking notes, while Officer Hamilton surveyed the room, taking in the birthday decorations, the abandoned cake, and the family members in various states of distress. Perhaps we could speak somewhere more private, Officer Hamilton suggested. Nonsense, Eleanor replied firmly. This concerns my family, and they should all hear what I have to say. Frank gestured toward me. That's Dana Anderson, my niece. She's been spending unusually large amounts of money recently, and now we know why. Officer Hamilton turned to me. Miss Anderson, what's your response to these allegations? I struggled to keep my voice steady. They're completely false. Grandma never gave me any money. I've never seen or received a check for $400,000. Then how do you explain your new car and that luxury vacation? Frank interjected. Officer Hamilton held up a hand. Sir, please let me conduct the interview. She turned back to me. Can you explain your recent purchases? Taking a deep breath, I explained I bought a used Honda 6 months ago after saving for 2 years. It cost $22,000 and I have all the loan documentation. The Hawaii trip was mostly covered by reward points from my company credit card. I can show you all my financial records. Eleanor leaned forward. Officer, I wrote check number 3782 from my main savings account on March 15th of this year. $400,000 made out to Dana Louise Anderson. I have the records in my study. My mother stepped in. Officers, my mother has been experiencing some memory issues lately. We're concerned this might be a confusion. I am not confused, Eleanor snapped, color rising in her cheeks. I know exactly what I did with my money. Officer Hamilton nodded thoughtfully. Mrs. Wilson, would you mind if we looked at your financial records? That might help clarify the situation. Not at all, Eleanor replied. Frank, please bring my financial binder from the desk in my study. Frank hurried off, returning moments later with a thick blue binder. Eleanor had always been meticulous about her finances, keeping paper records even in the digital age. Officer Hamilton sat beside Eleanor as they opened the binder. Mrs. Wilson, can you show me the record of this check? Eleanor flipped through the pages with practiced ease, stopping at a section labeled March. She pointed to an entry. Here it is. March 15th. Check number 3782. $400,000 to Dana Anderson. My heart sank as Officer Roberts peered over to confirm. There is an entry here for that amount, he said to his partner. Frank shot me a triumphant look. See, Mother knows exactly what she's talking about. Officer Hamilton remained professional. Miss Anderson, can you explain this? I can't, I admitted, my voice breaking. I never received that check. I never asked Grandma for money. I don't know why that entry exists, but I swear I never got $400,000. Officer, my mother interjected. Is there any way to confirm if this check was actually cashed? We would need to see Mrs. Wilson's bank statements, Officer Hamilton replied. Eleanor nodded. Those are in the second drawer of my desk. The bank sends them monthly, and I keep them all. My father volunteered to retrieve them, returning with a stack of envelopes. Officer Hamilton carefully opened the most recent statements, working backward through the months. As they examined the statements, I noticed something odd. Eleanor wasn't watching the officers, she was watching Frank. Her eyes tracked his every movement, noting his shifting weight, his tapping fingers, the sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. Here's March. Officer Hamilton announced, pulling out a statement. She scanned the pages, her brow furrowing. There is indeed a withdrawal of $400,000 on March 16th, the day after the check was supposedly written. My stomach twisted painfully. How was this possible? I had never seen held or deposited such a check. Check the signature card, Eleanor suggested calmly. The bank would have kept a copy of the endorsed check. Officer Hamilton nodded. We would need to request that from the bank officially. But this does confirm a large withdrawal coinciding with your record. Frank moved closer to me. So what did you do with the money? Dana, investment gone wrong, gambling debt, or just wanted to live the high life for a while? Anthony stepped between us. Back off, Frank. This doesn't make sense. Dana would never do this. Officer Roberts had been quietly observing the family dynamics. Now he spoke up. Mrs. Wilson, who has access to your accounts? Eleanor's expression remained calm. Just myself and Frank. He has power of attorney for financial matters. We arranged it last year when I had my hip surgery. Officer Hamilton's attention shifted subtly to Frank. Mr. Wilson, you have access to your mother's accounts. For emergencies only, Frank said quickly. I would never use it unless absolutely necessary. Officer Hamilton made a note. And when was the last time you accessed your mother's accounts? Frank hesitated. I don't recall exactly. Maybe when we paid her property taxes in January. Eleanor's voice cut through the room. He accessed it on March 15th, the same day that check was written. The room fell silent. Officer Hamilton looked up sharply. How do you know that Mrs. Wilson? Because the bank calls me whenever someone other than myself accesses the account. Security measure I set up years ago. They called me on March 15th to confirm Frank had my permission. Frank's face paled slightly. That was routine, Mother. I was just checking your balance to make sure the property tax payment had cleared properly. Officer Hamilton was now studying Frank with increased interest. Mr. Wilson, did you write any checks from your mother's account on that day? Of course not, Frank snapped, his composure slipping. This is ridiculous. We're getting distracted from the real issue here. Dana took the money. Officer Roberts had moved to examine the financial binder more closely. Mrs. Wilson, may I look at some of your other monthly records? Eleanor nodded permission, and the officer began flipping through pages, comparing entries. I sat frozen, unable to comprehend how this was happening. The evidence seemed to confirm Grandma's accusation, yet I knew with absolute certainty that I had never received any money from her. Officer Hamilton addressed Eleanor again. Mrs. Wilson, when you gave this check to your granddaughter, was anyone else present? Eleanor paused, her eyes briefly meeting mine before answering. Number. It was a private matter between Dana and myself. And what specifically did she say she would do with the money? Another pause. She mentioned some investment opportunity, something that would yield better returns than my current portfolio. Each detail added weight to the accusation against me. I could feel the trust of my family members eroding with each passing minute. Officer Hamilton turned to me. Miss Anderson, we'll need to look at your financial records as well. Bank statements, investment accounts, anything that might show what happened to this money. I nodded numbly. Of course, I have nothing to hide, but you won't find anything because I never received that money. As the officers continued gathering information, I noticed Samantha and Nathan whispering again in the corner, their faces tense. Nathan checked his watch repeatedly, while Samantha kept glancing at her father with what looked like growing anxiety. What I didn't understand yet was that Eleanor was watching them too, her sharp eyes missing nothing as her carefully laid trap began to close. Officer Hamilton suggested we move to Eleanor's study to examine the financial documents more thoroughly. The family followed, crowding into the wood-paneled room, lined with bookshelves. Eleanor's massive oak desk dominated the space, its surface meticulously organized with files and folders. Mrs. Wilson, do you keep copies of all your financial documents here? Officer Hamilton asked. I do, Eleanor confirmed. 50 years as an accountant teaches you the value of thorough record-keeping. Officer Roberts began spreading the bank statements across the desk, while Officer Hamilton continued questioning Eleanor about the specific check in question. Frank hovered nearby, occasionally interjecting details that supposedly supported his mother's claim. Here's the March statement again, Officer Roberts said. There is definitely a withdrawal of $400,000 on March 16th. He pointed to the line item on the statement. My mother leaned in to look. But does it say whether it was a check or another type of withdrawal? And who made the withdrawal? Officer Roberts studied the document. It just shows the withdrawal amount and date. We would need the actual check images from the bank to confirm who deposited it. Eleanor had been quiet for several minutes, watching the proceedings with an oddly detached expression. Now she spoke up. Officer Hamilton, would you please look at my signature in the check register compared to the signature on the account withdrawal slip? They should be in the same folder. Officer Hamilton raised an eyebrow but complied, pulling out the documents in question. She placed them side by side, studying them carefully. There appears to be a slight discrepancy in the signatures, she said after a moment. Frank immediately moved closer. Mother has had some tremors lately. Her signature isn't always consistent. I have had no such tremors, Eleanor said sharply. My handwriting is as steady as it has always been. Officer Hamilton looked between them, then back at the documents. The signatures are similar, but there are differences in the formation of several letters. Eleanor nodded as if this confirmed something she already knew. She had grown strangely quiet, observing rather than participating in the conversation. Her eyes tracked Frank's movements as he paced the study occasionally, stopping to look over the officer's shoulders. Officer, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, I can provide all my bank statements from the past year. You won't find any deposit of $400,000 because I never received it. That's easily explained, Frank countered. She could have opened a new account or converted it to cash. $400,000 in cash, Anthony scoffed. That's ridiculous. Officer Roberts had continued examining the financial records while we argued. Mrs. Wilson, there seem to be several large withdrawals from your accounts over the past year. He pointed to various entries in the statements. $20,000 here in January, $50,000 in November of last year, another $30,000 in August. Eleanor nodded. Yes, I noticed those as well. Frank quickly interjected. Mother makes regular withdrawals for various investments. Nothing unusual about that. What investments? Frank Eleanor asked, her voice suddenly sharp. I haven't made any new investments in over 2 years. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Officer Hamilton's attention had fully shifted to Frank now. Mr. Wilson, as the holder of power of attorney, can you explain these withdrawals? Frank's composure visibly faltered. Well, Mother authorized them. For various purposes. I don't have the specific details at hand. That's interesting, Eleanor said calmly, because I authorized no such withdrawals. Officer Hamilton straightened up. Mrs. Wilson, are you saying these withdrawals were made without your knowledge? That's exactly what I'm saying, officer. Just as I never wrote a check to Dana for $400,000? The room froze. I felt like I couldn't breathe as I processed her words. Mother, what are you talking about? Frank's voice had risen an octave. You just said you gave Dana the money. Eleanor's gaze was steel. No, Frank. I said that to see how everyone would react. Particularly you. Officer Hamilton looked between Eleanor and Frank. Mrs. Wilson, are you now saying you did not write a check to your granddaughter? I am, Eleanor confirmed. I never gave Dana any money. But someone has been taking money from my accounts and I needed to find out who. Frank's face had gone completely white. This is the confusion talking. Mother, you just spent the last hour insisting you gave Dana that money. No confusion, Frank, just a test, and you failed spectacularly. Eleanor turned to Officer Hamilton. If you look at the withdrawal slips for all those transactions, I believe you'll find they were all signed by Frank, not me. Officer Roberts was already examining the documents. There are indeed different signatures on these withdrawal forms. Some appear to match Mrs. Wilson's. Others have the discrepancies we noted earlier. My relief at being exonerated was overshadowed by the growing horror of what Eleanor was suggesting. Had Frank been systematically stealing from his own mother? This is absurd, Frank sputtered. I've been managing Mother's finances to help her. Everything I've done has been for her benefit. Eleanor's voice was surprisingly gentle when she replied. Was the new boat for my benefit, Frank or Samantha's house down payment, or Nathan's sports car? Samantha, who had been silent until now, burst into tears. Dad, you said Grandma wanted to help us. You said she approved all of it. Nathan backed away from his father, bumping into a bookshelf. You told me Grandma wanted to support my fresh start after the layoff, that the money was a gift from her. Frank's face contorted with anger. Shut up, both of you. Mother has been confused for months. She agreed to help you both, and now she's forgotten. Officer Hamilton had heard enough. Mr. Wilson, I think we need to continue this discussion at the station. There appears to be evidence of financial misconduct here. Frank looked around wildly as if seeking an escape route. This is a family misunderstanding, that's all. Mother gets confused. She forgets things. I forget small things, Frank Eleanor said quietly. Names sometimes, where I put my glasses. But I never forget numbers. I never forget my money, and I never gave permission for you to take it. As the reality of the situation became clear, I moved to Eleanor's side, taking her hand. The elaborate ruse she had created, accusing me to draw out Frank's behavior, had worked exactly as she had planned. She squeezed my hand, a silent apology in her eyes. Officer Hamilton was on her radio requesting additional officers and explaining the situation had evolved from the original call. Officer Roberts continued gathering financial documents as evidence. You're going to believe her over me, Frank shouted, desperation edging his voice. She's senile. She doesn't know what she's saying. Eleanor rose from her chair, drawing herself up to her full height. Despite her age, she suddenly seemed formidable, the sharp-minded accountant who had broken barriers in a male-dominated field decades ago. I know exactly what I'm saying, Frank, and I have the records to prove it. You've been stealing from me for over a year using your power of attorney to access my accounts without my knowledge. Today I finally caught you. The trap had sprung, and none of us, least of all Frank, had seen it coming. I would like to speak privately with Officers Hamilton and Roberts, Eleanor announced. And I want Dana to join us. Frank immediately objected. Absolutely not. I'm your power of attorney mother. I should be present for any discussion about your finances. Officer Hamilton shook her head. That's Mrs. Wilson's decision, sir. And given the circumstances, I believe it's appropriate for us to speak with her privately. This is ridiculous, Frank sputtered, his face reddening. She's clearly confused. She's making accusations that make no sense. Eleanor fixed him with a steady gaze. If I'm so confused, Frank, why are you sweating? Why did Samantha start crying when I mentioned her house down payment? Why has Nathan been unable to look me in the eye all afternoon? Frank fell silent, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Officer Hamilton gestured for Eleanor, myself, and Officer Roberts to follow her to the sunroom at the back of the house, away from the rest of the family. Once we were seated in the wicker furniture surrounded by Eleanor's beloved plants, Officer Hamilton addressed my grandmother directly. Mrs. Wilson, I need you to explain exactly what's been happening. Eleanor nodded, her posture perfect, her hands folded calmly in her lap. I never gave Dana any money. That was a test, a way to smoke out who has been stealing from me. And you believe that person is your son? Officer Roberts asked, notebook ready. I don't believe I know, Eleanor replied firmly. It began about 14 months ago. I noticed small discrepancies in my accounts, withdrawals I didn't remember making. At first I thought perhaps I was indeed becoming forgetful, but the accountant in me couldn't let it go. She explained how she had begun keeping a separate secret set of records, comparing her bank statements with her own meticulous notes. The pattern became clear. Every time Frank visited me alone, there would be a withdrawal from my account within 24 hours. Usually between $5,000 and $20,000. Why didn't you report this sooner? Officer Hamilton asked. Eleanor's expression softened slightly. Because he's my son. I wanted to be absolutely certain before I accused him. And I wanted to understand why. Was he in some kind of trouble? Gambling debts? Medical bills he was too proud to tell me about? She continued explaining how she had set up a system with her bank to notify her whenever anyone accessed her accounts using the power of attorney. The notifications confirmed my suspicions. Frank was making withdrawals without discussing them with me. But I still didn't have proof of where the money was going. Until today, I said softly, understanding dawning. You set a trap. Eleanor nodded. I invented the story about giving you money, Dana. I chose you because you're the only one I was certain wasn't involved. I needed to see how Frank would react to the accusation, whether he would try to deflect attention from himself. And it worked, Officer Hamilton observed. Better than I expected, Eleanor admitted. Not only did Frank immediately accuse Dana, but Samantha and Nathan's reactions told me they were at least aware of what was happening, if not directly involved. I felt a mixture of relief and hurt. Grandma, why didn't you tell me what you were planning? I thought you actually believed I had stolen from you. Eleanor reached for my hand. I'm sorry, dear. I needed genuine reactions from everyone. If you had known, you might have unintentionally given something away. Frank had to believe I was truly confused about my finances for the trap to work. Officer Roberts had been taking detailed notes. Mrs. Wilson, how much money do you believe has been taken without your authorization? Approximately $680,000 over the past 14 months, Eleanor replied without hesitation. I have documented every unauthorized withdrawal. I gasped at the amount. Officer Hamilton looked equally shocked. And you believe your son has been using this money for personal expenses, for himself and his children? The timing coincides perfectly, Eleanor explained. Samantha bought her house 11 months ago, shortly after a withdrawal of $100,000. Nathan's new car appeared after a $40,000 withdrawal. Frank's boat followed a $75,000 withdrawal. She reached into her dress pocket and pulled out a small notebook. I've kept track of every major purchase they've made and matched it to withdrawals from my accounts. Officer Hamilton examined the notebook, nodding slowly. This will be extremely helpful evidence, Mrs. Wilson. There's more, Eleanor continued. In my desk drawer, you'll find photocopies of withdrawal slips with signatures that don't match mine. Frank became careless over time, his forgeries less exact. I looked at my grandmother with new eyes. The woman everyone had been treating as increasingly confused had been meticulously building a case, documenting evidence, and planning an elaborate sting operation. What made you suspect Frank in the first place? I asked. Numbers never lie, Eleanor said simply. And Frank has always been terrible with finances. Even as a child, his allowance would vanish immediately while Laura saved hers. As an adult, he's lived beyond his means for years. When Harold died, Frank immediately asked about his inheritance rather than grieving his father. Officer Hamilton stood. Mrs. Wilson, we need to speak with your son again. Would you like to return to the main room with us? Eleanor nodded. Yes. I want to hear what he has to say for himself. We returned to find the rest of the family in various states of distress. Frank was pacing angrily while Samantha sobbed on the couch. Nathan stood by the window, staring out at nothing. My parents and siblings watched the scene with confused expressions. Frank Wilson, Officer Hamilton, began formally based on the evidence provided by your mother and our preliminary investigation. There appears to be significant financial misconduct involving Mrs. Wilson's accounts. Frank spun to face us. This is absurd. Mother is confused. She's been getting worse for months. Ask anyone? Frank, Eleanor said quietly. I have copies of every withdrawal slip. I have records of every unauthorized transaction. I have documentation matching those withdrawals to purchases made by you, Samantha, and Nathan. Frank's face contorted with rage. You've been spying on me. Your own son? I've been protecting myself, Eleanor corrected, as any responsible person would. Officer Roberts stepped forward. Mr. Wilson, we need you to come to the station to answer some questions. This is ridiculous, Frank sputtered. I've done nothing wrong. Mother gave me permission to help manage her finances. To manage them, Frank, not to take my money without my knowledge or consent. Samantha suddenly stood up. Dad, just tell them the truth. It's over. Frank rounded on his daughter. Shut up. This has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with her, Eleanor interjected. You used my money to buy her house, didn't you? And Nathan's car. And your boat. Did they know where the money was coming from, Frank? Did they know you were stealing from me? Nathan's shoulders slumped in defeat. Not at first, he admitted, not turning from the window. Dad told us you wanted to help us, that you'd authorized him to give us the money. But what Officer Hamilton prompted. But about 6 months ago, I overheard Dad on the phone with the bank, Nathan continued, finally turning to face us. He was pretending to be acting on your behalf, Grandma. That's when I suspected something wasn't right. Samantha wiped her tears. He told me the house was a gift from you, Grandma. Our early inheritance, so I could enjoy it while you were still alive to visit. When I started asking questions about thanking you properly, he kept making excuses. Frank's face had gone from red to white. You ungrateful brats. After everything I've done for you. You've committed fraud, Frank, Eleanor said sadly. And you've involved your children in it. Officer Hamilton nodded to Officer Roberts, who approached Frank. Sir, we need you to come with us now. Frank's demeanor suddenly changed, his anger transforming to pleading. Mother, please. I was going to pay it all back. I just needed to help the kids get established. You have so much money, more than you could ever spend. I was just borrowing it. $680,000 isn't borrowing, Frank. It's stealing, and you forged my signature to do it. As Officer Roberts began reciting Miranda rights, Frank made one last desperate attempt. This will destroy the family, Mother. Is that what you want? To see your son arrested? To tear us all apart? Eleanor's face showed sadness, but no weakness. You destroyed this family when you decided to steal from me and lie to everyone. You betrayed my trust, used your children, and tried to frame Dana when cornered. Those were your choices, Frank, not mine. Frank's shoulders slumped in defeat as Officer Roberts led him toward the door. Samantha and Nathan watched in stunned silence as their father was escorted out. The front door closed behind them, leaving the rest of us in shocked silence, trying to process everything that had just happened. Officer Hamilton remained behind to collect additional evidence and statements. Mrs. Wilson, we'll need formal statements from everyone, and I strongly recommend you revoke Mr. Wilson's power of attorney immediately. Already prepared, Eleanor said, opening a desk drawer and removing a document. I had my lawyer draw this up last week. I just needed confirmation of my suspicions before filing it. As the reality of Frank's betrayal sank in, I moved to my grandmother's side. The strong, brilliant woman who had trusted me enough to use me in her plan to expose the truth. The woman everyone had underestimated, believing her to be confused when she was actually more aware than any of us. I'm so sorry, Grandma, I whispered, taking her hand. She squeezed my fingers gently. No, Dana. I'm sorry for putting you through this. But I knew you were the only one I could trust completely. In that moment, I understood that while one family bond had been severed today, others had been strengthened in ways that would endure long after the pain of betrayal had faded. The days following Eleanor's birthday party were a blur of police statements, legal consultations, and family conversations that stretched late into the night. Frank was formally charged with elder financial abuse, fraud, and forgery. The evidence Eleanor had meticulously gathered left little room for denial, though his attorney would later attempt to build a defense around Eleanor's supposed cognitive decline. The family gathered at Eleanor's house the day after Frank was taken into custody. Samantha and Nathan sat uncomfortably on the edge of the sofa, their eyes red from crying, their shoulders hunched with shame. We should have known, Samantha said quietly. The amount Dad said you were giving us never made sense, but I wanted to believe it. Eleanor surprised everyone by crossing the room and embracing her granddaughter. You were manipulated by someone you trusted implicitly, your father. We're programmed to believe our parents. Nathan couldn't meet Eleanor's eyes, but we benefited from it. We accepted the money, the house, the car. Yes, you did, Eleanor acknowledged, not sugarcoating the truth, and there will be consequences for that. But unlike your father, you both told the truth when confronted. That matters. My mother had been nearly silent since the revelation processing her brother's betrayal. Now she asked the question, we'd all been wondering, Mom, why did you choose Dana for your test? Why not me or James or Anthony? Eleanor settled into her favorite armchair, looking at each of us in turn. I needed someone who had absolutely no involvement or suspicion. Someone Frank might believably target. End of 70A2. Eleanor settled into her favorite armchair. Dana has been open about her student loans, making her a plausible candidate for financial desperation in Frank's eyes. But more importantly, I trust Dana's integrity completely. Her words warmed me even as I recalled the pain of being falsely accused. But you let me think you believed I had stolen from you. That was hard. I know, dear, Eleanor said softly, and I'm deeply sorry for the pain it caused. But your genuine shock and hurt were essential. Frank needed to believe I truly suspected you. The legal process moved forward with surprising speed. Eleanor's evidence was compelling, and the prosecutor was confident in the case. Frank's attorney approached us about a plea deal within weeks, hoping to reduce the charges in exchange for full cooperation and restitution. Eleanor met with financial advisors to assess the damage to her estate and develop a plan for recovery. While the loss of nearly $700,000 was significant, her lifetime of careful investing meant she was still financially secure. The money isn't what matters most, she told me over tea one afternoon. It's the betrayal. Frank exploited my love and trust. That's the true theft. As word spread through the family's social circles, well-meaning friends offered sympathy tinged with suggestions that perhaps Eleanor should consider assisted living where this couldn't happen again. She dismissed these suggestions with characteristic directness. Being victimized doesn't make me incapable, she informed one particularly persistent friend. If anything, this experience has confirmed my competence. Indeed, throughout the ordeal, Eleanor demonstrated a mental sharpness that put to rest any lingering concerns about her cognitive abilities. The memory issues the family had observed were, she explained, often deliberate. I sometimes pretended to be more confused than I was, she admitted to me. It gave Frank false confidence, made him careless. And it helped me observe how everyone reacted when they thought I wasn't fully aware. 3 months after the birthday party, Frank accepted a plea deal. He would serve 18 months in prison, followed by 5 years of probation, and was ordered to make full restitution. Samantha and Nathan were required to return the house and car purchased with stolen funds, though they avoided criminal charges by cooperating fully with investigators. The family dynamics shifted permanently. Samantha and Nathan, initially ostracized by some family members, gradually began rebuilding relationships, starting with Eleanor herself. Holding grudges poisons the soul, Eleanor told me when I questioned her willingness to forgive them. They made mistakes, owned them, and are facing the consequences. That's how growth happens. My relationship with Eleanor deepened in unexpected ways. We spent more time together, not out of concern for her well-being, but because I had gained a new appreciation for her wisdom and strength. She began teaching me about financial management, sharing knowledge accumulated over decades. Women must be financially literate, she insisted. Financial independence is true freedom. 6 months after the disastrous birthday party, we held a small, intimate celebration for Eleanor's 82-and-a-half birthday, just immediate family without the pretense and tension that had marked the original event. Eleanor, resplendent in a simple blue dress that matched her eyes, raised her glass in a toast. To truth, which can be painful but is always preferable to comfortable lies. And to family, not the one defined by perfect harmony, but the one built on honesty, accountability, and genuine love. We clinked glasses, the sound bright and clear in the sunlit dining room. The wounds were still healing. The loss of Frank's presence still felt, but something new and stronger had emerged from the wreckage of betrayal. Later, as guests departed, Eleanor took my hand and led me to the quiet of her study. "Dana, I want you to know something. Of all my grandchildren, you remind me most of myself at your age. Principled sometimes to a fault. Willing to stand your ground even when it's difficult." I felt tears threatening. I was terrified when you accused me. I couldn't understand how you could think that of me. "I never did," she assured me. "Not for a second. I knew you would be hurt, confused, even angry. But I also knew you would emerge from it with your integrity intact. Some people break under pressure. Others reveal their true strength." In the months that followed, I often reflected on the lessons from that extraordinary day. How appearances can be deceiving. How those we trust most can sometimes betray us. How age doesn't diminish wisdom or cunning. How standing in your truth, even when everyone doubts you, is its own victory. Eleanor, at 82, had outmaneuvered a skilled manipulator, protected her assets, and exposed a painful truth that ultimately strengthened our family. She reminded all of us that being elderly doesn't mean being helpless, that women can be financially powerful, and that integrity matters more than appearances. As for me, I learned to trust my own truth even when evidence seems stacked against me. I learned that being accused doesn't make you guilty. And I learned that sometimes the most loving thing someone can do is believe in your integrity enough to test it. Have you ever been falsely accused of something you didn't do? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story about family betrayal and ultimate justice resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that standing in your truth eventually leads to vindication. Thank you for joining me for this deeply personal story. And remember, sometimes the people we think are the most vulnerable turn out to be the strongest among us.